Episode 56 begins at the Black Pyramid's tomb chamber. So you're probably wondering what was Mumm-ra's new plan this time. Well, the first thing he did, as any bad guy would do, transform into his monstrous form, just like he always does. So now that that's finished, what Mumm-ra did next is something he never did before. So he asked his ancient spirits of dreams to make him a quote dream master. Well, why not? Freddy Krueger was a dream master, so why not Mumm-ra? So now that Mumm-ra's the quote dream master, he decided to do something that Freddy Krueger would do, but even better. He decided to invade the Thundercats' dreams. So that's exactly what he did. So what Mumm-ra did next is that before his plan can proceed, so he decided to make nightmares for all the Thundercats. And why is that? Because as anyone would tell you, it was all part of his plan. So later at Cat's Lair, what Mumm-ra did first is that he appears in Panthro's room. So after appearing in Panthro's room, what Mumm-ra did first was to introduce himself. Next thing he did was to command Panthro's dream self was to appear right in front of him. And so it did. So after Panthro's dream self did that, so what Mumm-ra did is that he had pleaded his case to say, I'm your master, you do as I say, and etc. So back with Panthro's dream self, he just told Mumm-ra the quote Dream Master to say, if you wish me to obey you, you'll have to catch me first. So what Panthro did is just like what he did in real life. Use his fighting skills. So one of the first things he did was that he uses his nunchucks. But unfortunately Mumm-ra's power had decided to disarm Panthro. So he did. And that causes the nunchucks to go against Panthro. So what Mumm-ra did is that he had pleaded his case with Panthro's dream self to say that your weapons are not a match for me and etc. So back with Panthro's dream self, he managed to avoid the attacks, but he knew he couldn't stand a chance. There's only one thing left to do, was to go to the Thunder Tank, so he did. But unfortunately for Panthro, as he was heading towards the Thunder Tank and the Thunder Tank's garage, also the hangar, that's when Mumm-ra was pursuing him. So back with Panthro, good news, he made it to the Thunder Tank. So he goes one-on-one with Mumm-ra, but before he could do anything about it, Mumm-ra uses his power to levitate the Thunder Tank. He told Panthro to surrender because he said, and I quote, only I can stop your nightmares from becoming a reality. So now Panthro is realizing that the Thunder Tank is turning against him. He dodged everywhere. And then he was chased by the Thunder Tank itself until he was soon realizing that he had no place else to go. So after a long story short, it's bad news for Panthro and he became Mumm-ra the Dream Master's victim. So the next thing Mumm-ra did is that he goes to Chitara's room next. And he did the same thing to Chitara as Panthro did. So just like what he did to Panthro, Mumm-ra had commanded Chitara's dream self to appear to him, and so it did. So Chitara, just like what Panthro did, when she found out what had happened, she started attacking Mumm-ra, but unfortunately, he disarmed her. So she does what any good guy would do. She tries to use her super speed against him, but unfortunately, Mumm-ra's power had forced her to slow her down a little. So that's what happened. So he told Chitara in this case that there's nowhere to run and that you had no choice but to surrender and etc. Just like Panthro did. So long story short, Mumm-ra, the quote Dream Master, just told Chitara that she has no choice but to become a slave just like what Panthro did. And that's when she saw before her eyes her friend Panthro now a slave, just like what Mumm-ra, the quote Dream Master said. So for her this is bad news. So after Mumm-ra, the cool Dream Master, had slaved to Thundercats so far, he goes to Tigress' room, and he did the same thing as Chitara and Panthro did. So just like what Chitara and Panthro did, Mumm-ra, the cool Dream Master, had commanded Tigress' dream self to appear, so it did. So now that Tigress' dream self had appeared, just like what Chitara's and Panthro's did, He decided to do what any good guy would do, become invisible, but it didn't work. So as Tiger couldn't figure out what's going on, so Mumm-ra, the cool dream master, was more than happy to plead his case. He said to Tiger, "You couldn't resist me. Your friends couldn't do it either," he said. And to show proof, that's when before Tiger's eyes he sees Panther and Chitara, now his slaves. Mumm-ra's, that is. So what Mumm-ra, the dream master, did was to command Panther and Chitara to capture Tiger, so that's what they did. So unfortunately for Tucker, he became the third slave of Mumm-ra the Dream Master. So the next thing that Mumm-ra did is that he appeared in the Thunderkittens' room, and he did the same thing as the other three Thundercats did. So what Mumm-ra the Dream Master did was that he commanded the Thunderkittens' dream cells to appear just as the Thundercats did. So that's what happened. So what Mumm-ra the Dream Master did after calling the Thunderkid's dream cells to a prayer, just as the Thundercats did, so what he did is that he pleaded a case to the Thunderkins to say they will obey him, but when they refused, they decided to attack. But not so fast. Mumm-ra repelled the attacks. So when their pills became a dinosaur, that's when the kittens know what to do. They decided to freeze it in ice. But that didn't work either. So now that Mumm-ra the Dream Master had made the dinosaur disappear, what the Thunderkittens did next is that they decided to go into Plan B. But he said the exact same case as the Thundercats did, that their weapons are useless and etc. Then what the Thunderkittens Dream Cells saw was unbelievable. Chitara, Tigra, and Pedro, all Mumm-ra the Dream Master's slaves. But that's not all. Mumm-ra, the Dream Master, just let slip to the Thunderkins that he's now in control of the Elder Thundercats' dreams. And once that's done, he said that the real Thundercats will be in control as well. So, in other words, in Mumm-ra, the Dream Master's case, as for Lino, he'll be all by himself. Well, as anyone will tell you, it was all part of his plan. But Lino was not aware of this yet. The next morning, after the night's encounter, Panther went first back to his room, then Chitara, then Tigra, then the Thunder Kittens. But what the Thundercats didn't even realize is that in a couple of Skycutters we had Slide, the leader of the mutants, and Jackalman. Now Slide just told Jackalman to coin a phrase, "Why don't we give the Thundercats a wake-up call they'll never forget?" So that's what they did. They attacked the cat's lair. So long story short, after the Skycutters had attacked the lair the first time, Jackalman had made a compliment to Slide, and then asked the question, "What do you say we give them another shot, shall we?" So they did. Inside of Kessler's control room, the alarm went off. So by the time that the Thundercats had arrived in the control room, we have Tigra, Lionel, Chitara, and Panthro. But unfortunately, the control room screen wasn't working. So Panthro suggested that they should head to the Thunder Tank, so that's what they did. So long story short, now that the Thunder Tank have left the lair, Chitara just lets Panthro know that there are sky cutters above them. Well, Tigra knows what to do. He gets the cannon ready, and so he did. Well, Tigra was shooting at Jackalman in a sky cutter and everything went fine. That was until, long story short, Tigra fell asleep. So Lionel did what he had to do to wake up Tigra, so he did. So after Tiger woke up in time to shoot the Sky Cutter again, but this time the Sky Cutter with Jackalman fired back. Well, Pantro knows what to do. He decided to use the front cannon, so he did. So thanks to Lionel who pushed the button for the ice cannon, it went right to Jackalman of the mutants. So now that the Sky Cutter is all frozen, that causes Jackalman to crash into the bushes. Well, good news, that takes care of Jackalman. Now here comes the bad news. The Thundercats now have Slide, the leader of the mutants, to deal with. So when Cheetar told Panthro to get ready for an attack on Slide, the leader of the mutants, Panthro fell asleep. Unfortunately for Cheetar, since she failed to get Panthro's attention, that leaves everybody else to evacuate the tank. So they did. And that leaves Panthro to crash into the rock. The only Thundercat that didn't evacuate was Lino. So finally, when Panther woke up and found out that he had crashed the Thunder Tank and without knowing anything about it, he asked what happened. Well, Lionel just told Panther what had happened. He fell asleep, and that's why they crashed. So now that Panther had found out about it, he says, "Oh no, my Thunder Tank!" As for Lionel, he went over to Chitara to ask if she was okay. Well, good news, she's fine, and so was Tigra. So as that was going on, that's when Slythe had landed his sky cutter to pick up Jackalman. Now, before he did that, Sly found this very, very weird. He didn't even hit the Thunder Tank at all. It just crashed by itself. At least that's what he told Jackalman. So even though Jackalman agrees with Slythe, but then pleads his case and to coin a phrase, looks like the Thundercats are sitting ducks now. So now that Jackalman's on the Sky Cutter, that's when the mutants left the scene. So, back with Lionel, he now knows what to do. He does what any good guy would do. He uses his sword's power on the Sky Cutter that has Jackalman and Slythe. So he did. Although the Sky Cutter's not badly damaged, according to Slythe, he says one more round should do it, so he turns the Sky Cutter back around, so he did. So back with Lionel, now that he knows that his Sky Cutter is heading towards his direction, he told Panther to get Chitara and Tiger out of there and to go somewhere safe, so he did. Anyway, back with Lionel, he's still face to face with a Sky Cutter that's heading his way. So back with Lionel, although despite a minor setback, he grabs his sword and uses his sword power on a Sky Cutter that has Slythe and Jackalman. And when he did, that's when the Sky Cutter went out of control and then it crashed. So back with Mumm-ra in his Pyramid's tomb chamber, he saw what had happened in the cauldron. He then pleaded his case. He said soon that Lionel will be all by himself because what he doesn't realize that just the previous night Mumm-ra had been controlling his friend's dreams and to make them a terrible reality. He also said that in Lionel's case he'll be defenseless and alone. Because, as he says in his case, his nightmare, Lionel's that is, will be coming true in just a moment. So later that night at the Kessler's control room, we have Panther, Chitara, and Tigra couldn't figure out what was going on earlier that day. At first, Chitara says that her strength has been draining, and then before you know it, Tigra pleads his case to say he tries to aim at the Sky Cutter when he was operating the cannon earlier at the Thunder Tank before it crashed. Then Panther has his turn to plead his case. He says he has no idea why he crashed the Thunder Tank when he did, and all he did was fall asleep while he was driving it. Then Lionel has his turn to agree with his friends, and then he said that I guess we're all very tired. Why don't we all get some rest and we'll figure this out tomorrow, he suggested. He also suggested that he'll take the first watch in the control room, so that's what he did. But he's not alone because guess what? Snarf's there with him. So Snarf woke up and then he suggested to Lionel to let someone else take over for a change. All right, Lionel says, I'll wake up Tiger in just a minute, he said. So both Lionel and Snarf fell asleep in the control room, but what they didn't realize is that someone was outside Cat's lair and just left the pyramid moments ago. And that someone was Mumm-ra. You remember, he was the quote Dream Master after all. So what Mumm-ra, the quote Dream Master, did first was to command all five of the sleeping Thundercats to come to him. So they did. First is Panther, then is Chitara, then is Tigra, then last the Thunder Kittens. So once all five of the Thundercats' dream cells are outside of the lair to join up with Mumm-ra, and what he did next was unbelievable. So long story short, while that's going on, Lionel just heard the sound of his sword of omens that told him that there was something wrong. So when Lionel was told by Snarf that there's something going on, so after Lionel, who agrees with Snarf, he did what any good guy would do. Look through his sword's eye to tell him what happened. So he did. And then what Lionel saw was shocking. All five of his friends, their dream cells, of course, being possessed by Mumm-ra, now the Dream Master. But wait, that's not all. What Mumm-ra did was that he put all five of the elder Thundercats, including the kitten's dream cells, into these little urns. So that's what was going on. No wonder all five of them were tired. After Lionel saw what was going on in the control room, thanks to his Sword of Omens, he told Snarf we have to hurry and wake them up right away, so they head off. So Snarf went into Tar's room to wake her up, but he had no such luck. Then Lionel was in Panthro's room, and he was trying to wake up Panthro, but nothing happened. So when Snarf came back to join up with Lionel in Panthro's room, I guess it's confirmed, even though we didn't see it, that he tried waking up Tigra and the Thunderkins too, but no such luck, and so he told Lionel the bad news. So Snarf asked him, "What's going on here?" So, in omission by confession, Lionel told Snarf what had happened. He said that earlier, Mumm-ra, for the last 2 nights, had been controlling all of his friends' dreams. And all he is doing is that he puts them under a spell. So after Lionel told Snarf that there must be a way to help them somehow, I agree, Snarf says, but there's only one problem. How are we going to do that? They're all asleep, he said. So, Lionel said to Snarf that he has a plan. He says to Snarf, "Why don't you stay here? I'll take care of this." And so he heads off. Oh, and speaking of Mumm-ra, he's going to the River of Despair, but he has no idea that Lionel was running to catch up with him. So back with Mumm-ra, he had finally arrived at the Whirlpool of Infinity. You're probably wondering, what's he doing there? Well, he had pleaded a case to throw all of the Thundercats' dreams in there, and once that happens, they'll be his slaves forever, and their real selves, sad to say, will be asleep forever. At least that's what Mumm-ra says in his case. Oh, back with Lionel, he finally arrived at the Whirlpool of Infinity, just like what Mumm-ra did. So guess what Lionel did? He did what any good guy would do. He throws his sword to catch the urns before they fell into the whirlpool itself. And luckily he did so. So back with Lionel, he pleaded his case with Mumm-ra to say it's over. Not so fast, Mumm-ra said, and he just let slip to Lionel that only a Thundercat can break the Dream Master's spell. So after Murmur just let slip, and then he told Lionel there's no way you're going to break it. Maybe not, but the sword will, Lionel said. So, just like what any good guy would do, that's exactly what Lionel did. He projected a Thundercat signal from his sword, just like what any person would. So back in Cat's lair, but this time in Panther's room, Panther was the first to wake up. Then in Chitara's room, Chitara was next. And in Tiger's room, Tiger was next. And then the Thunderkins' room, the Thunderkins were last to wake up. So their real selves are now on their way to the scene where Lionel is. In the meantime, back with Lionel, he's face to face with Mumm-ra, and they go into a combat with each other. But then, back with Mumm-ra, when he looked over his shoulder, the first Thundercat to arrive on the scene is Chitara. Back with Mumm-ra, after he saw what had happened when Chitara was coming to the scene, he said, "No, impossible! You're all my slaves, remember?" Well, unfortunately for Mumm-ra, his plan once again had backfired. So, after the rest of the Thundercats had arrived on the scene, just like what Lionel did, they even not only got their dream selves back, so they even got themselves back. For real. So yes, unfortunately for Mumm-ra, the spell of the Dream Master is broken thanks to Lionel. So once again his plan backfired. So guess what happened next? So now that all six of the Thundercats have surrounded Mumm-ra, that's when he tries again to beg and plead to say he's their master and etc. But unfortunately for him, he had no idea that his spell had been broken, thanks to Lionel and his sword. So now that Mumm-ra knew that he had been beaten defeated, again, he goes back to his mummified form, and so after that he goes back to his pyramid. So meanwhile at the pyramid's tomb chamber, Mumm-ra, once again humiliated and disgusted, he just couldn't believe what just happened. His plan almost worked, but then it backfired again thanks to Lionel and his sword. Also, thanks to Lionel and his sword, the Dream Master spell had been broken. So before Mumm-ra goes to his sarcophagus, he says, "Next time, Thundercats. There will always be next time." And so he goes to sleep in his sarcophagus. So the next morning at Castle's control room, Snart fell asleep along with his friends that surround him. Of course, Chitara wanted to know from Lionel if it would be all right to wake him because, as she says, he was sleeping so peacefully. Even though Lionel agrees with Chitara, but then suggested to let Snarf know that they all made it back okay so he wouldn't be worrying so much. So Panthro has his turn to not only agree with Lionel, but said, "I don't think Snarf's very worried." So what Lionel did is that he woke up Snarf. So when Snarf woke up, he was surrounded by his friends. He said, "Hey, what's going on here? You're all supposed to be asleep." So Tigra went first to speak in his case and says, "You can relax. It's all over. Mama's spell had been broken," he said. Then Snart decided to ask Wily Kid a question. "What's that?" "Well, it's an urn," Wily Kid said, and she explains that if Mumm-ra, he once had a plan to imprison their dream selves and throw them into the whirlpool of infinity, they could fall asleep forever. Unfortunately, as I said before, that plan backfired. So why the kid gives Snart the urn and said, "Take it. Since you missed the adventure, you should have it as a memento," she suggested. So Snart looked at the urn and said, "Gee, it is pretty." So he wanted to know from the Thundercats, "Does this mean I'm your master now?" Then Lionel had a thought about Snart's question and said, "If you were our master, what would you have us do?" "Well, I would say you should all go straight to bed," he suggested. Snarf, that is. So the Thundercats are proceeding to do just that. Now with Mumm-ra defeated, they're gonna need it. So that ends episode 56.